Myself, Thomas Mills is present. Fire Chief of Broadview, Tracy Kinney is absent. In her place is Deputy Chief Matt Martin.
Here.
Our appointed public member from Maywood, Honorable Mayor Nathaniel George Booker.
Here.
Right. And our Secretary, Mayor Fire Chief Craig Bronar is not here. We do have enough for a quorum. At this time, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a few seconds for quiet reflection of Thank you. Number two, we have any news media guests? We have not a guest, but Attorney Mike Jerusik for the Village of Broadview.
Maywood.
I'm sorry, Maywood. I am sorry.
Giving away contracts.
I am sorry. It's like you're always here anyway, so there you go. Sir, can you identify yourself?
For the record, Vlado Vranges, attorney for Broadview.
Okay, spell that for me? Oh, okay. Oh, I got it right here. Thank you. All right, thank you. All right. No one has signed up for public comments. Number three. We now have meeting minutes to be approved from the August 3rd, 2022 meetings. Do we have any objections of those meetings being approved?
Move to approve.
Okay, move to approve. I second. It was moved by Mayor Booker, seconded by myself. Have a roll call. Deputy Chief Yancey, Maywood, Deputy Chief.
Approve. Yeah.
Myself, Broadview Police Chief Thomas Mills is a yes. Deputy Chief Matt Martin, Broadview Fire Department.
Yes.
Appointed public member for Maywood, Honorable Nathaniel George Booker.
Yes.
Okay, and Secretary Maywood Fire Chief Craig Bronar is absent. That carries 4-0. I'd like to put on record that our Honorable Mayor from the Village of Broadview, Katrina Thompson, is now present for the meeting.
Good morning.
New business. Fiscal statistics and operational status, we have Lieutenant Mike Acom from the IKE 911 Broadview Police Department.
Good morning, everyone. Director Reyes is out of the office, so I'll be giving his director's report this morning. Status updates for the month of September through September 1st through the 30th. IKE 911 Center received 6,658 calls via 911 emergency and non-emergency phone lines, generating 3,165 documented calls. In comparison to last year, 2021, in September, the IKE 911 Center received 7,328 calls via 911 and non-emergency lines. Calls received this year were down 670 from last year, and calls for service were down 103 from last year. The Broadview telecommunicators are still without a union contract, and emergency medical EMD classes are still being sought for telecommunicators for both Maywood and Broadview for certification. AT&T has began their equipment installation for our next generation 911 initiative coming in 2023. So the next generation 911 gives dispatchers the ability to receive text messages from our citizens and video and pictures. So instead of them having to call 911, if they prefer to text, we'll be able to receive text messages in our communication center. And that's an internet-based circuitry. And the balance for the IKE 911 Center, as you have in front of you right now, is $809,075.30. I received a couple bills from Chicago Communications from the Maywood Police Department, and we had an agreement with Chi-Com that we wouldn't be paying maintenance after we went from analog to digital. So I do see a May statement here, which we were still using analog in May. However, June is when we made our transition. So the June invoice, Broadview didn't pay, and neither Maywood should be paying. So I have had correspondence with our Chi-Com Communications consultant on this, and I will reach back out to him. There was an invoice from Maywood in the amount of $877.50. That was for a portable radio going into emergency status. So Chi-Com did have to come to the IKE 911 Center and reset that, and that bill was taken care of. And that shows on your on our balance sheet.
You said the 877?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
That was paid on 10/11. And if there's any questions I can answer for you, I'm more than willing.
And that's new business. We'll make a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
I second. Okay, it was properly motion by Mayor Booker, second by myself. Roll call. Deputy Chief Yancey.
Yes.
Myself, Thomas Mills, Broadview Police Chief, yes. Deputy Chief Matt Martin, Broadview Fire Chief.
Yes.
And our appointed public member, Honorable Mayor Nathaniel George Booker.
Yes.
Yes, that carries 4-0 for the information provided under new business. Number 6, old business. Update from Maywood Council establishing IKE 911 Emergency Joint Agency as an independent agency.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Drusik, on behalf of Maywood. Last night, I finally got some time to myself to focus on the IGA update. Mayor Booker and I were lamenting about how emails can overwhelm your schedule. But I'm happy to announce I took a lot of time last night. I put together a very comprehensive update to our IGA. I redlined it, which is going to be important because, as you know, we have to apply, if we're going to become an independent, separate employing agency and be eligible for our TCOs and our other employees to participate in IMRF. IMRF needs to, their legal counsel needs to look at that. So my goal is to maintain a red line and then also a clean copy of the final changes that are approved by both communities. And then we can ship that over to IMRF as part of the application process. Make it easier on their council to see the edits we made. Some of the significant edits are, of course, turning the IGA from what was really a joint venture of two communities that had to not only come together to run a 911 center. We had to build a 911 center. We had to get approval from the state police, the new 911 administrator, process of our consolidation petition. So that IGA was extremely comprehensive from the standpoint of it took us from, consolidation, design plans, construction, and then ultimately operation of the 911 center as a hybrid, as a village supplies its own TCOs, Broadview supplies its own TCOs, Broadview provides the director and pays for the director. So it has a lot of unique characteristics to it that I needed to back out to really leave us with the idea going forward is, we're going to have a separate employer entity. We're not going to have a hybrid model anymore. The two communities aren't going to be supplying their own employees to staff the place. We don't have to worry about consolidation because we already did it. We don't have to worry about the build-out of this facility because we already did it. But I did need to leave in certain things, such as, does this facility expand at some point in time? Do we grow into a second PSAP, a need for a second PSAP? Do we grow, we take on more members at some point? Because I know there's talks of possibly, further consolidation with other entities. The agreement, I took some time to make sure that it lines up well with adding new members or consolidating with other entities. It had the bones for that, but now it's clear that that's, there's a process there that's a little more detailed. One of the things that is redlined in there that's a new concept along those lines is a capital contribution of any new member. We had that addressed under the participation fee, but it was addressed the same way kind of in LTAC, in West Central, WC3, the different entities that I created. Their IGAs deal with new members and participation fees. I thought it was something worth considering. Should we have a capital contribution fee in addition to the participation fee? So any new member, if they're an associate member, right, they're just going to come and pay a fee to get services from us. That can be done very easily in, with an IGA that I've used, say, with LTAC and Countryside. Countryside doesn't sit on the board, doesn't have a real role in LTAC, but LTAC services Countryside. That's almost like you're buying your services, right? That's an easy model. But if we have communities that want to join, IKE 911 as a full member, as a participating member, as a board member, a vote in this, a say at, sitting at the table, there was a major investment in this facility by two communities. I put some language in there about a capital contribution that a financial, consultant would help us basically identify the present day value of that capital contribution for the new member, kind of amortize it, and that's sort of, you want to join this particular group, you need to pay up front for the investment that the other two communities made to get us to this service level. So something to think about. I think it's a good add-on. That is probably the only thing that we really didn't talk about in any detail in the past. All the other edits are really designed to take the consolidation language out, to take really the construction out, but leave in some language about if this facility gets a new facelift or expanded, or we have to acquire other land or buildings to create a second PSAP because we've grown. I left in some of the language that says the parties, the board at that time, the then current participating members would by an addendum, figure out the finances and the nuts and bolts of how that would all work. So I left some language to help us there, so we don't have to retool this agreement over and over again. And then, in a director, this board would hire a director as its employee. The director would go about hiring, TCOs. I mean, you're going to hire a professional to run the place. I've made some changes on the personnel end, which are required by IRMA. It's going to be truly an entity with its own employees. I made some tweaks to the operating board and the director, the role of those two groups, how they interact. So take a look at it. We can maybe talk about it at the next meeting. I certainly welcome Broadview's legal counsel to take a look at it because we worked collaboratively on the first iteration. This is an update. But I tried to get everything kind of in place where if it gets approved, the state is going to certainly approve it because it's just like all the other agreements they approved, and the hybrid uniqueness of us will go away and they won't mind that. And then I also wanted to make sure that IMRF was covered, and their requirements are covered. So that this moves the ball, at least to the next phase of both communities look at it, Legal on our side's looked at it, Broadview look at it, maybe next meeting, you know, we can see if we're close to a finished product. If we are, I have template resolutions from the last time around when we approved the initial IGA. You know, let's just use those and, you know, update them to match the new title. That would be an easy approval. Once we get that behind us, then it's completing our application to IMRF to get the ball rolling there. As I mentioned before, there's a study that needs to be done by IMRF that will look at, you know, essentially an actuarial study costing out what it's gonna cost to bring this group of employees into their system. Some of those employees are already in their system. It's really a conversion or a transfer, bless you. And that would be the next step. It sounds like based on the chief's report, we you know, Broadview is still working on a TCO contract. Maywood does have a TCO contract in place. Our contract has language that accounts for this transition and you know, moving to a separate employer entity. So, you know, there may be some union issues that we have to deal with. There always are, but those are addressed in our contract, and you know, they're going to be part of your negotiations on Broadview's side, and they may get resolved depending on how quickly we move this IGA forward. But we're on the right path. I finally got the work done. I'm glad I did. Sorry it took an extra cycle, but it's just been a little hectic. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know, and if not, I will stop talking and we can move on.
I have a question. So when you say they would be they would be a municipality that's with us, but not participating and not have a seat at the table, like, what is the difference and breakdown between, like, I'm just paying a fee for you to handle my 911?
That's it.
Versus if we do the independent, what's the difference in what other communities that have a seat at the table? Like, you're not a part of the voting body, does that mean you pay a lesser fee? I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I can get you the numbers from like LTAC. I don't have them right at the tip of my tongue, but, you know, for instance, LTAC is 3 communities: Western Springs, LaGrange Park, LaGrange. They're in for a penny, in for a pound, so to speak, third on all costs running their center. Countryside participates simply as a pay-as-you-go service entity. So their service territory is covered by LTAC, and Countryside just pays a fee. And off the top of my head, I don't know what it is, but it's an annual fee paid, I think, on a quarterly basis, is my recollection. And that it was based on their call volume, and it was based on, there is some accounting in the number that accounts for a premium, so to speak, of, you know, LTAC is covering, you know, not only the calls to that service, but there's, you know, it's you're not an owner in LTAC, so you're paying a little more than you might otherwise be if you're paying, you know, you were as just an independent kind of, it's almost like outsourcing your 911 center is what Countryside decided to do. And, you know, someday they may choose to make a capital investment and be a larger participant in LTAC, but they chose not to. And that's something that is, it's in our IGA, and it's in all the other ones I prepared, because it's an option where some communities may not want to be that involved in the process, and may want the flexibility of just kind of doing it almost like a pay-as-you-go. And if I choose to move to another 911 center, if that makes more sense at some point down the road, then
how much notice would they have to give if they were to say, if they're pay-as-you-go?
Their contract, I think, locks them in for 1 or 2 years. Our contract locks us in. There's a 2-year notice for Maywood and Broadview under our contract.
But if I'm just the participating community, what notice do I have? How much notice do I have to give?
It's up to you. You know, you can set it. I think Countryside's notice was, I think it's a year. The commitment was a 1-year commitment, and they needed to give us notice 12 months out. There's also a process. It's not like going to the grocery mart and you can pick a different, like, you know, type of milk, right, or eggs. It's once you commit and join LTAC or IKE 911, you know, the state's got to approve it because you're changing your service territory and the operation, so there's a state approval. And, you know, there's a process with that too, so it's not something where you're out shopping, you know, for the best deal every 3 months, because there is an administrative kind of process that needs to be approved if you're gonna jump hopscotch between 911 centers.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you can set the terms how you like, and I'll give you, if we get to that point, I'll give you the other templates that I've worked with other communities, and you can pick what you like.
Yeah, the Chief, you answer any questions?
Just one, as far as the labor agreements, getting under one labor agreement if we move forward with this process. How does that work?
That's the goal. I mean, what really happens is the folks that are employed by the individual collective bargaining units would no longer be employed by them, and there would be an opportunity for them to be hired by this entity. There is talk of, since both communities have the same labor union for each of their TCOs, or they did, that's no longer the case. Then there may be some thumb wrestling over who is the next, right, labor union that would represent this group of employees working here. So that would be something that the group of employees would have to choose who their representative is through the collective bargaining process. But us as an employer, or as separate employers, we would take steps to end the relationship, you know, with the unions and with the employees at a time when we're ready to make the transition. We have to do this kind of turnkey. We have to make sure that the lights are on and the service calls are handled. So that will be in a negotiation with the unions. The two labor attorneys for the two communities will have to work on that transition, so we're not stuck in a gap where we don't have coverage. So that'll be negotiated.
Chief Martin?
No, I just need a copy of it.
Yes.
Somehow.
I did email it. If
Yes.
I didn't hit everybody's email, I apologize. I tried to grab, I used everybody off of the last email that Craig sent out, or Chief Brownhouse sent out. So check your emails. If you didn't get it, let me know.
I'll send it to you. I know it probably went to Chief Kenny.
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, it did, yeah, I'm sorry. It did
That's
go.
okay, yeah, that's
Yeah,
okay.
you did receive it.
Again, I just have to
Thompson?
review.
Did you receive it? Yes.
Last night? Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I just used Chief
Yes.
Brownhouse distribution list.
Sure. I don't have any questions. For the record, Chief Brownhouse is now present. He was late. He had a fire in Maywood. Chief Brownhouse, you have any questions? This is old business and the update that Mr. Jerilsik provided. Again, we have, yes, but Mayor, if you have anything to add, would you like to?
So I do.
Yes.
Because we had a meeting with Westcom
Yes.
to have these conversations. So what role would that play for Ike if we having a conversation with Westcom, who has 20 years of experience in telecommunication? If we bringing on more partners, or if we going with, or if they moving over here, what does that look like? And I know that Brian, who's the executive director of Westcom, he sent us some bylaws and their IGA with the other partner communities on what that looked like. So how does that mirror what's being proposed to the Village of Broadview, and how we play a role in all of this? So I guess it's just the two councils getting together and reviewing all documents, even the redlined documents that we have, for all to be transparent to the community. To, if this is something that we're considering, we got to consider that IGA as well as we move forward. So I don't want to rush into something that may not happen. I mean, it makes sense to consolidate to be its own standalone agency, but if we're having conversation with other communities, we either go move forward as our own standalone, or we just need to be upfront with them to say, no, we're going to do our own thing, and if you want to become a partner. So, you know, we just need to be true to ourselves. So I don't know if you have the bylaws and the IGA. I mean, I know I got it.
They were sent to me, and I do represent one of the members.
Okay.
River Forest is in that entity, right?
Yes.
River Forest, yeah, so that's one of our clients. And, yeah, I mean, I just received received it, but I look at it as an opportunity for, Maywood and Broadview made a significant investment in this facility. It's state of the art. It was designed with extra capacity, as my understanding.
Well, we did the build out, let's be clear, Mike. Broadview did the build out and we invested our dollars to do this. What was invested was the technology of the telecommunication, the radio station and all of that, but the build out is the Village of Broadview. So let's be clear on what the investment is. The investment was the Village of Broadview. However, the IKE 91 Center was a collaboration between two communities as it relates to how we do radios and all of the telecommunication part. So, and that was a percentage, a small amount versus what we invested in. So I want to be clear and transparent in the conversation. And again, I just want to know, what is that going to look like if we having conversation with Westcom versus the IKE, and how we mirror whatever they have so that we can present something to them versus what they already have. And I just want to make sure that we doing right by both communities, if that's going to be a relationship. And if it's not going to be a relationship, I don't want to waste time. I want to move forward with IKE and the ball rolling in the direction that we had talked about early on. But things come up and things change, but we need to look at their IGA to say, we can accommodate this or we can't accommodate this, and we just gonna stay our own standalone. But if those other communities want to become partners, what you just discussed, then we need to leave the door open for them to participate with capital if we need to, you know, in the future, consider capital and all those other entities. So that's just my comment on this conversation. I just don't want to waste the time. Or I don't want to waste people's time.
Yeah, and I addressed the potential of any type of maybe consolidation with that other entity in the red line that I did last night, because I don't know where that's going to go. And I don't know what the status of their facility is compared to this facility. Is it an upgrade for them to come this way? Is it an upgrade for us to go that way? Does it make sense to have? That, to me, would make the most sense, given, yeah.
But they said it was smaller than.
Yeah, and they're old.
Yeah, they said they busting out the seams
I
now.
just want to make sure, because they have an executive director,
Sure.
they have staff, and we have a director, and we have staff.
Yes.
And it's just, I'm just basing it off of when we got into the marriage.
Yep.
And what we did to make it work. And now we've grown and we communicate and we have a better dialogue because we learned some things. And one thing that I learned the most out of that is the staff. And so we just need to be upfront with the staff. Even those that's in the, we just need to be upfront, like, where do their careers lie as districts? And then I just want to be perfectly clear. I don't want that on my watch to say, you got a job today and then tomorrow you collaborate with this entity that's already got all of whatever they got. What happened to our executive director? What happened to the supervisors? They have supervisors. So when I'm looking at an IGA, I'm looking at the perspective of what they sent us. I haven't looked at what you sent, but I've looked at what they sent us with their bylaws versus now I gotta go and read what was sent to us and what they already decided on Broadview to make it wholesome, to make it better, to make it greater, to be more efficient in the direction we're going. But I like the standalone entity. I like that concept, but now that we're asking, or another community has approached us and we've had this meeting, we have this dialogue, I mean, literally, the police chiefs and the fire chiefs really got to step up to the plate and be very vocal in, you know, decision making, because they are, the telecommunications is not about the mayors or the village managers, it's about public safety when they pick up that phone. And the fire and the police departments are the only ones that really can make a real professional decision on what that look like. It's just us streamlining what that look like, what that mirrors, what that relationship is going to mirror for our communities as well.
Yeah, the agreement I put together did what the task I was asked to do, which is update your agreement, but I also built in the flexibility to add new members and made that very clear, which sets the table for the two, Maywood and Broadview, to have a dialogue with that other entity and to see where it goes. And
I think you should get the bylaws and the IGA.
I do have those. Yeah, I have those, and yep, yep,
No, I sent it to them when they sent them to us.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, just so that we can be, you know,
Yes.
transparent. I mean, I'm looking at it from a lot of different angles because I know what it took to get us even to that from the beginning.
Well, we may want to have a sit-down with them, like we did when we started this marriage, which was a round table. Managers, mayors, chiefs were at the table, legal counsel was at the table, and we did a bunch of round tables right here. And we may want to have that dialogue with those other three communities to say,
So that was how it first got started.
That's how it
We
got
had
started.
the round table, they
Yep.
sent all the documents, and then I forwarded it to you. So I
And-
think right now where we are is, in one instance, that is a feasibility study thought process of if that even works for them of their size, because as they said before, they got 27 staff members. They want to look at possibly reconfiguring the room. Is this feasible? Is this a possibility? I think the bigger part that we're going to have to be very long-term intentional thought process is bringing in 3 other communities that now the call center will have to learn those other 3 maps and deal with that stuff, because we're still dealing with the 911 center at times. A Broadview resident Broadview call center person might not be familiar with the Maywood map not be familiar with the Broadview resident. So some of that stuff is still being talked about. So I think that right now, either way, the goal of this was to become a separate entity, and looking at applying for the grant funding that they were talking about on the 31st, or looking at the possibility of that might not even happen for another 2 years. So I think we're talking about in my opinion, right now, we're talking about 2 different things. But I do understand the thought process of job security and longevity of the staff, and making sure, even if they were to come in, are they coming in under IKE, or are we transitioning and consolidating Westcom? I don't think we're in any space to consider those things, but I do think going into the independent entity, whether that happens whether the Westcom and IKE marriage happens or not, still needs to be moving forward, because we can't wait another year and a half potentially of whatever this marriage potentially will become, of bringing on 3 different entities, if the space allots for it, or if we're going to renovate or add more space, or whatever it might become.
well, you touched on feasibility study, and that's what we did to get IKE 911 off the ground. It's what all the other entities always do. They do a feasibility study, and that is probably the right next step if there's a desire of these 5 communities to explore consolidation. Then a feasibility study, cost shared among the 5 communities, or the 2 entities, IKE and Westcom. That's really the first stage of a feasibility study of what are the options for bringing these 5 communities and 2 entities together in the most cost-effective manner to deliver the best highest level service. That's the name of the, and so that may be your next step in that. You keep this IKE 911 update, IGA going down the path, because it's necessary, and it doesn't preclude you from adding them as members at some point down the road if the feasibility study has that as something that's a viable option, and the 5 communities think it's, or some of the 5 think it's a good idea, not, maybe all 3 of them don't come this way, right? Who knows? Or maybe the two of you go that way, who knows? But my guess is, I know their facility, my understanding, was older. This is state-of-the-art, brand new. So it makes sense with extra capacity. So my understanding always was, we had the ability to take 1 to 3 communities on. That was my understanding with the way this was built out.
And then it's also, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Mayor.
No, I was just gonna say, who's to say that it would be their staff, their directors and their executive directors versus us keeping ours and keeping what we have, or them getting hired to come over here. That's a much longer conversation. That probably wouldn't even happen until around 2024 or something like that.
And you have this opportunity, the whole idea was to reduce the number of PSAPs, but there's the ability to have PSAPs and alternate PSAPs, and, their facility may house, let's just say you did join together.
Sorry, are you here for the safety meeting?
Yes, they'll come out and get you, sir.
Yeah,
It's being
just-
held
yeah.
somewhere else, okay?
I got a question. I think I know, who's the 3rd community of West Coast?
It's Forest Park, Oak Park, as well. Yes.
Okay.
And we were all at the meeting, both mayors and the police chiefs and these entities, and just for you. So the understanding that I thought is, and I think I can say, well, both mayors, so we're undecided the impression I got is they want, Westcom wants to come here and take over as the independent governing agency. And we would relinquish the IKE 911, I mean, we'll keep the name, but, so like the mayor was saying, so like Brian Staunton, he would remain as the executive. So I know both Chief Kenny and I and the deputy chiefs, we had a meeting and we brought up the same question, how are our employees protected versus what you're saying, and I think I read some of your stuff last night and I got in this morning, was reading it, and the language I got from is that our IKE is going to be, you know, we're moving to make it an independent agency as IKE 911 with the people that we have as both mayors and our entities, but then just say if Oak Park wanted to break away from Westcon and want to come under the IKE umbrella, then we would entertain it like in the way you worded this preliminary. I think it's like what the mayor says, the impression I got, and when we had our meeting, they, you know, Westcon wants to be that independent agency and we're going to relinquish that. So I think for the purpose of this, you know, you have the info that they sent us. We'll send it to Tiffany. I think she has it already. If not, I'll make sure she receives it. Yeah. And maybe we can add this as new business at the next IKE meeting. And maybe, you know, by that time yourself and Tiffany can have some comment, you know, just some.
We'll talk about both agreements.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's, we have to have the dialogue.
Terminology takeover, was that used in terminology?
No.
No, it was a collaborative.
It was kind of understood of the direction that was in their best case scenario desirable outcome.
So it's a lot of work to be done.
But no, nothing aggressively.
Right, but there's a grant that's available for some sizable money, so they wanted to take advantage of that and they grouped it in. But it was a very informal meeting, just to kind of like what they said.
Okay.
Yes, it was a conversation. No, I understand, yes, and, but just reading what Attorney Jerusik sent out last night, I was reading it this morning and listening to you. I like it, I have no issue, but it was more like if, say, Oak Park, or let's just say, Westchester wanted to break away and say, wow, we want to come over, it would fit in, but in fairness, I'm not right. It seems as if, well, we know that like Westcom wants to be the independent governing agency, and we will send it over. So
yeah, and that was the direction that came from this board. And you know, until I get marching orders different, you know, our goal is to take this agreement and you know, work out the best arrangement for IKE going forward. But you know, this is a new wrinkle, and yeah, we need to evaluate it and have a dialogue about it. So yeah, if we could.
Well, I know you have it. We'll make sure Tiffany has it, and we'll just add this to new business.
Perfect.
And then at the next IKE meeting, we can just touch on.
Yeah, Tiffany and I will talk we'll talk in advance, so you know we have something to say.
I have a question. For the first step with the feasibility studies, does the IKE agency and Westcom have to agree as the agencies to do that feasibility study, or is that the municipalities that does that? Who makes that? Who takes that first step?
The feasibility study's got to be. It's got to be a partnership. You're exactly right. I mean, we shouldn't do it if they're not interested in the outcome.
But I mean, does this board make that agreement, or is that amongst the 5 municipalities?
Well, you got to have your buy-in from your mayors and your boards.
That would be a dual.
Because Westcom is its own entity, and then we got us, which is we operate as a board for operations and governance board, but when it comes to final decisions, it's got to go to the municipality for the final, you know, if we're going to vote to do an IGA, then we can go to the next step. But I brought it up because I don't want to waste people's time. I don't want to waste our tax dollars paying legal fees to do all of this work, and we having conversations about where this lies in, and the fire chiefs and the police chiefs, they play a big role in this. And I want to stay in my lane, but I want to be very supportive of what public safety means and what relationships means and collaboration means, so that we're transparent to everybody, because if we do this venture, it's not just about protecting Broadview and Maywood, it's going to be talking about Oak Park, which is much bigger, Forest Park, River Forest. And so now we're looking at bigger, and these chiefs got to all work together if it's a standalone, whereas now if we trying to balance that out and trying to figure it out. So we do need that independent, so that we don't get into employee relations as a municipality, because we don't, well, we're only responsible for our employees, but we're responsible for whole operations. And so we just need to streamline and make it clear, and an independent agent makes that clear for us. But if we're gonna do a feasibility study, that conversation, this board needs to be having that conversation, and we need to be just upfront of what realistic matters are, not what we personally want or emotionally want for our communities, but
Yep.
what makes sense. And if we're talking to other communities, we need to be upfront with this board. The conversations are taking place, like you said, is it a takeover? No, that wasn't the impression that it was a takeover, it was more a partnership and collaboration on how we get to the next level. But that's about the extent of it, but it was a conversation at hand. And I want to be upfront with the communities, especially with Broadview. I'm gonna be upfront, even if it don't feel good. But we gotta have a conversation and give you the hard stuff to make it right. And, I mean, the good part is Mike has relationship with one of the municipalities
Yep.
that he represents, so that kind of streamlines, so he can pick up the phone
Right.
and kind of figure out some things to
I-
help us.
I just
And-
wanted to make
and-
sure we were staying in pace with the municipalities, you know, with something like that, we don't,
This is complicated.
we
Yeah.
don't get in front of.
The village boards ultimately have to authorize this, because at the end of the day, as the mayor said, you're charged with operations here and running a 911 center. The village boards of these 5 towns all have to look and say, this is more intergovernmental agreement, and it's also spending money for something different than running the 2 911 centers. It's doing something bigger than that. So it's really village board approval of each of the 5 towns. And actually, we're special counsel for Oak Park, and I've got a real good relationship with their inside village attorney. So I know 2 of those communities very well, so we can certainly work through, if it goes that way, we can certainly work through this in a way that will be transparent and, you know, figure out, the feasibility study is the biggest thing, though, because that will tell you which options are most cost-effective and are gonna be best for the overall good of servicing the service territories.
Chief Brown,
No, I was gonna say, I'm in agreement, and you're having the conversations at your levels. I think that the chiefs are gonna have the conversations at our levels, and that's even the command staff, because it starts with telecommunications, caters, and then right after that, it's the shift supervisors. We're in here, but they're out on the street.
all right.
There's a lot that's gonna figure into that equation also.
All right, so we're gonna add to new business, update of, as possible, you know, because there's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Do we have another meeting with them before? Do we have another meeting with them
I
before?
don't think so. Yeah, I don't think one was made, so. And that'll give, both Attorney Jerusik and our Attorney Tiffany Nelson to, review their bylaws and things that they have sent us, you know. But for clarification, Attorney Jerusik, that's what came out of the meeting we had with the villages, so, you know, but I agree. That's all we have. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second, okay, there's a motion by the Honorable Mayor Booker and second by Deputy Chief Matt Martin, I'm sorry. Roll call.
One thing
Yes.
before, I'm sorry, one thing before the roll call. Just in regards to what Chief Brownell was saying in this whole conversation, we are having a meeting with leadership of police and fire to get a full understanding and conversation of which, multiple different ways of which way this can go, which we'll be bringing back to the next board meeting, this conversation. So, in regards to saying, it's not just the village making a decision, it's not just the mayor making a decision, it's not just for these staff members, but for both municipality staff members as well. So that will be a part of the conversation brought in for the next meeting as well.
And I know, to add on what you said, I know Deputy Chief Martin, Deputy Chief Smith, and both myself and Chief Kenny, we spoke already, and Chief Kenny is recovering from knee surgery, so we will also have a meeting, and we will add some information at the next IKE meeting as well. I know it's just this process, you know, and we're in the beginning stages. It's like 2 different type of processes. One that the mayors have direct input, and then, but again, we'll speak about the operational part if this should happen, what needs to be done, add that on to the new business. Anything else, Mayor? Okay, it is now 10:48. The Ike 911 meeting is adjourned.